bitch, do we have a fistful for you today, literally. Today's guest is Professor Hunter Hargraves, and he is an aficionado on the art of fisting. I am so excited for you to be on here.
So wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
First off, I actually don't know a lot about fisting, fun fact. I'm extremely excited to learn a lot today myself. All right, so with my channel, I always like to start at ground zero. We don't make any assumptions around here. So can you tell the audience what exactly is fisting?
A hand and a butt. Sometimes two hands and a butt. And sometimes a hand and a dick and a hand and a toy. It's about hole stretching, and often that is accomplished with your appendages.
It is truly amazing how many things you can fit up there. Are you open to talking about how you got into fisting and like when you started it?
Yeah, I actually fisted someone for the very first time when I was 17.
Hell yeah. Oh my God.
I was on a date with this really weird Seattle raver boy. I was still very much trying to figure out like what sex was. I was fingering him, and then he was just like, you can add more, you can add more, you can add more. And then It just slipped in. And I was like, okay, this is powerful. Like this is, I remember being like rock hard when that experience happened. Just being kind of, oh, this is crazy, but also it feels natural in so many ways too.
Can it be fun for the average person, or do you think it really needs to be for you? Or do you like, it's an interesting question because like obviously you need to be curious for something to be into it or even want to explore it, but do you think it's not for the faint of heart?
It's both, right? If you are somebody that like jerks off to a lot of fisting porn and just like wants to be like the biggest hole around like someday, totally. Then yeah, you're probably gonna be fine down the road. But even if you're just like someone who bottoms a lot and really is like maybe curious about what the fullness of a fist would feel and how different that is to a dick, it's something that I think a lot of people can sort of access. So you have to treat fisting as a kind of athletic practice to a certain extent. I always tell people like, just like you're not gonna go to the gym and like, you know, all of a sudden bench all of the weight on a bench press. You're not like the first time you take a fist, you're not gonna necessarily be taking that much of what, like you have to treat it like training any other kind of muscle. I think for a lot of guys that are just thinking about taking a fist or very intimidated by the idea of like taking a fist, my hole's too tight, like there's no way a hand could fit up there. If you say it out loud like that, like they're probably like the hand is not gonna go in. Like
you're stressing yourself out.
So, you know, it is about mindset. It's about trusting another person to have their hand in you. It really is about like, how can you get into that headspace where all of a sudden you can really push your hole in ways that like you've never done before, and trust others to push your hole in ways that you've never done before. Like, one of the cool things about fisting is like, you don't have to stress about your dick, and you don't have to stress about like erectile dysfunction or anything like that. And you don't have to like worry about what you might be taking, like a boner pill or something like that can like look up your heart like that.
I get asked all the time on the Bombs Digest about douching and prep. We have our own bulb for douching. It's primarily only for penis and toy douching. But what I've never really been able to answer is douching and prep for fisting and what that process is like.
I probably over douche, like when it comes to fisting to a certain extent. I know some fisters who clean out kind of exclusively with bulbs, but I would say the vast majority of fisters that I know these days like have a hose set up in their shower. I prefer a silicone or kind of nozzle at the end of it rather than a metal nozzle. Metal nozzles are awful, like never use them. Sorry, that's me editorializing.
You can like snake it a little more with a...
You can snake it a little more, and even if you're just going to be taking a fist and you're not like trying to take a lot of depth or anything like that, you do want to clean out past that second hole because you want that to be just as clean as, you know, to make sure that the first hole stays clean.
When I talk about over douching on the Bombs Digest, I'm like, you should not be over douching your asshole just for like plain Jane regular sex, because that's just like unnecessary. You're putting like an unnecessary load on an unnecessary load. If you have a different type of lifestyle, if you know you want to be fisted later in the afternoon, like these are all different things. So I love that you're sharing these tips that I would not know how to talk about them. So this is the one time I will endorse a shower attachment.
If you know you're going to be fisting in public, you know, it's a dark room situation, it's, you know, it's something like that, then yeah, you want to be maybe a little bit more mindful about like that sort of thing. But if you're just fisting at home and your bathroom is 10, 20 feet away,
Right.
don't try to overcomplicate it.
And fiber, y'all. Fiber. Fiber does the deep cleaning, the deep cleaning. Is there any recommended equipment that you would quite literally recommend having on hand?
Cream-based lubes are a great way to start. Crisco is a great way to start, even.
Yeah, it's all natural, y'all.
It's all natural. It absorbs really well. Regardless of your experience level, you want to use something that just you're able to use a lot of. When you start to actually really stretch the hole, that's when you can add like a more viscous J-Lube, X-Lube kind of like solution, or the kind of powdered lube that's used to birth animals. So it's a veterinary lube. J-Lube, you can buy it, farm stores and
I was gonna say,
stuff like that.
Tractor Supply.
Yeah, absolutely.
My mom used to work at Tractor Supply. She's a huge fan of this show.
Hey mom, did you know?
There are now lots of lube companies that basically take the same formula as J-Lube, but make it a little more human safe. J-Lube isn't bad for you, and fisters, I know lots of fisters who regularly use it, and it's great. But now there's K-Lube and X-Lube. It's a white powder that you mix a couple spoonfuls or capfuls in water, and you really shake it up in order to create this kind of like sticky, viscous kind of lube. If fisting is like the goal, and you're starting out with f***ing, use something like elbow grease. Use a kind of like cream-based lube for f***ing. That I feel like your hole kind of can absorb in a way that fits with the J-Lube better. I have figured out that like my favorite kind of lube is I actually take some elbow grease, blend it up, and kind of whip it up a little bit with like kind of lukewarm water, and then I add the kind of like powder to it. So I keep my fisting lube in just like a kind of like bicycle water bottle, a Gatorade bottle with a kind of like pop top is a really great way to do it, because you want something that's going to give you like this kind of like consistency.
The water bottle tip is next level. That is what we're here for right now.
Yeah.
Like, I love the home remedy stuff like that so much. And you also want something that holds a lot of it, because I swear, I tell most bitches every day, y'all are not using enough lube to begin with.
I think the standard go-to these days are puppy pads that are completely like piss absorbent, water absorbent, all of that.
And if you have a dog, you can use them 2 ways.
Right, yeah. I mean, they have practical uses outside of play as well. I don't have a pet, I just have a hole and a hand, so here we go. You can also get, some kind of like vinyl sheet or some kind of like play sheet. And you want to have paper towels around too. And then as far as like gloves or no gloves, I don't personally use gloves. The important thing to sort of say about that is like, if you're not going to use a glove, then you need to be very good about nail care, lots of like this, and if it's not feeling super smooth, if it's feeling kind of like even the tiniest bit of sharp, like file more and kind of make that work. And then you want to check your hands and make sure that there's no cuts.
We get asked about numbing lube all the time, and we always say it's a no-no.
But I say like, don't kind of with that until you've at least taken a fist just on its own with a bunch of lube, and again, understand the headspace, understand kind of the mind-body connection that's happening.
If you're reaching out to us telling us that you're having problems relaxing and stretching out for a penis, numbing lube should be like at the end of your journey of thought right now. Like, it should not even be on, like, we need to go back to the basics of you just breathing, bitch. Like,
it's very much like Sunday at the end of IML weekend is like, like that's when you bring up the numbing lube.
Yeah, like you've been stretched out for 3 days in a row. So you got the sling behind you. Are there any like positions that are preferred for getting going, or like is it just kind of like a free-for-all?
If you know your body, how you like to get fucked, like start there. Being on your back can be advantageous just because it allows you to have eye contact with your partner, especially like if you're still trying to figure out how to get into that mindset and get and access that kind of like headspace. Being able to have constant eye contact with your partner can be really helpful. You're a fisting top, like understand that like so much of your job is reading body language. You have to be hyper kind of aware of like where you're doing at all times. Reading body language, being able to pick up on twitches and where someone is maybe like trying to like push back, and that's kind of the vibe check that you really want to get into the habit of.
how long is the training process before it's time for a fist? It's going to be so different for everyone. And after what you just shared, it's really like, it sounds like really when you're ready to be a changed person.
The training process is always a process, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you are someone that is invested in your sex life constantly evolving and you constantly sort of like growing as a sexual sort of like person, then you need to let that curiosity like sort of take control. You know, so much of fisting, I mean, so much of bottoming period is like listening to your hole and like turning your mind off, still being aware of like what's around you, but also kind of just sort of saying like your hole's in charge.
It's never ending training. Like you're training for the rest of your life. And also every day is just so different. There's days where you're stressed, you're going to be tighter. There's days where you're dehydrated, you're going to be tighter. Like every day is a different day.
Just like the first time most of us got fucked, it was probably painful. It was painful because it was a new sensation and your muscle didn't have that kind of like muscle memory that comes with just sort of like years or a certain amount of time of like just being trained to understand and process that sensation. Fisting is the same way. So many of your first fists like you take might feel like it's just going in, you're going past the point of no return, and then all of a sudden like here you are, it's in, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, it becomes a kind of cartoon, like just like steam coming out of both ears, and you know, you have to focus on breathing, you have to focus on stillness almost to a certain extent. And I don't mean that in a like, don't be, you know, like it's sex, like you want to lose yourself in the moment, but like the less thrashing that you're doing, the easier it is to avoid kind of serious risk.
Listeners and viewers, this is not medical advice, always remember that. But even when I work with Dr. Carlton, we're like, y'all are doing what we told y'all not to do some shit and you're still doing it. So like, this is not medical advice. Some people want to know like the obvious long-term effects of fisting and like the parts of it that could potentially be dangerous.
It's something that I think a lot of people can sort of access, but you do have to be prepared for the possibility of blood, the possibility of shit in ways that maybe are a little bit more intense than just getting fucked by even a big dick. If you're thinking about a gradual overtime process of stretching your hole, then what you're really doing is you're teaching that muscle memory to turn pain into pleasure just quicker, like your sphincter, your rectum, like all of your body, you know, that muscle memory to snap into place. And so that way you're no longer experiencing pain, it's just going straight to pleasure. But when it comes to more substantial risks, you can tear the inside of your hole. A little bit of blood is not going to be that big of a deal. There's lots of like blood vessels that can pop in. There's a lot of blood. You can shove an ice cube up your ass and just kind of hold it there for a while. Every good faggot should have a box of tampons at their place anyways, just in case a friend of theirs needs to use one. But also a tampon can be really helpful if there's a tear or if anything gets really sort of aggravated on the inside of your hole to the point where like you can't apply pressure like that. And then like the first time, like I fisted guys where they were taking their first fist and they were like, I couldn't get fucked for a week afterwards because like I felt sore. It's important to not just think of it as like, I want to replicate this 20-second clip I saw on Twitter. I'm gonna go on a quick detour here, which is fisting kind of like wisdom. One of my favorite books is this book called The Divine Androgyne, which came out in around like 79, 80. He calls fisting like the yoga of cosmic erotic ecstasy.
Wow.
And so the idea of it is that if you think of it as like kind of a yoga like practice in which you're really focusing on like stretching something and really like pushing the muscle open and open and open and open, just as breathing is like absolutely essential to like yoga practices too, like a very centered and grounded kind of breath that can really help set the tone of like you being able to like push your body in these ways that like you don't necessarily think your body can like go.
Just last year started playing with butt plugs, with doing yoga poses with them more. I literally drooled on my mat. Like the way it was so life-changing, and I actually felt my whole like melt around the toy. And I was like, I have to start sharing this with people. This has been so enlightening, truly. In fact, it's literally been enlightening, come to find out.
Honestly, I do think, the best way that a lot of kink knowledge gets disseminated is just through conversations like these. And so, like, if you are starting to play in this sandbox a bit and trying to figure out, like, this is a kink that you really want to try more and more of, like, don't be afraid to ask questions about how other people see themselves, like, within their communities and how they see it as a sort of, like, practice. It's different for everyone.
Professor Hunter Hargraves, handfuls of information out here.
Handfuls of information.
Yes, thank you so much.
You bet.